What's actually stopping your business from being productive? I'm John Briggs, creator of the 3.3 rule and the 3.3 system. Now, I've done a video in the past on what's stopping us personally from being productive. But even if we're super productive as a person, it doesn't necessarily mean the business is always productive because there's other things that keep getting in the way. One of the first things that comes to mind is lack of training. Usually when we, as entrepreneurs, small business owners, hire team members, especially if it's in the early stages of our business or the first time we're hiring people, we take more of an abdication approach than a delegation approach. I don't want anyone to feel bad if you've found yourself in this situation. But a lot of times we're really busy, and we get to the point where our busyness and how overwhelmed we are reaches a breaking point. So we hire someone because we think that's going to help, and it can help. But the way we approach it in the beginning doesn't actually help us because we're like, oh, relief, I have someone, they can do this for me. Hey, Bob, new hire, go ahead and do this for me. So maybe you show them how to do it, whether that's through an experience of shadowing or maybe you have a checklist or some other form. Look, I showed them, they have everything. We assume they have all the knowledge in their head that we have when on this task now that we've showed them once, and we just want them to run with it. And then what happens is we stop thinking about them because we're so overwhelmed because, again, we reached this breaking point, and hiring them doesn't actually help us free up time. It helps us from stopping the overwhelm feeling of overworking. And now that we have them, we are still as busy as possible. We don't have a lot of space in our schedule. So our heads down doing what we need to do because we're trying to make the business work. And we're just hoping Bob, the new hire, is working out and doing this thing. Then maybe complaints start coming in. Something is going to trigger after we've ignored Bob. Something triggers, we go back and look at the work, and usually we find ourselves completely shocked at what they're doing. And no wonder that trigger happened, whether that's a client complaint or something else. Sometimes then entrepreneurs even stop at that point and say like, well, I guess this is never going to work. Bob, you're fired. I'm just going to have to suffer through this. And now we have hiring PTSD. Sometimes all it takes to get Bob up and running is a more formal training system. But without that training system, that type of scenario as I laid out, which we've seen happen, I certainly lived it in my first hires. As that situation plays out, we can understand why our business isn't being productive. So training systems is not just a one and done. It's not even hey, I recorded myself doing this once and now I have this training video and the new hire can watch the training video and all should be good. We've done that before, and I've seen the suggestion from so many people on this is the best way to record what you're doing for training. It might be the easiest way to start. So I'm not saying this is a bad method, but I'm saying it's not the best method. We have a team of more than 250 people, and we're constantly making training videos. Either the person doing the video takes what should be a simple video and makes it an hour long because they're trying to talk you through all the different exceptions and trying to brain barf every last experience that they've had into the training video, which sounds like that's awesome. That feels thorough. It's way too overwhelming. You actually want to help them build a foundation. Let's start with understanding what it is, like the checklist of what we wanted to do and all the nuances and maybe slight exceptions or those types of things is something you would add on after you feel like they have a grasp on the foundational things. Or instead of the overly thorough and too many tangent video, you get someone who's way too quick and it's like, okay, here's a checklist, and they read the checklist, which could be a Word doc that's shared with the new hire, and then that's it. And so while that could be good from a standpoint of, I just want you to understand the foundation, maybe not thorough enough because you didn't show them anything. I'm totally fine with recording videos as an easy way to start, but those videos should be reviewed frequently to see if they need to be updated. After you've made the video and you come back to it a month later or 2 months later, you'll see it's like, that video could be done better. Because the easiness of doing that method of just, I'm going to record myself, screenshot maybe, we don't take the time to like even script out what the process should be. And so even that is a better step. Why don't we give ourselves at least an outline of what we want to cover in the training video, then do the training video. I feel like even on videos that I've done where I've done these things and I'm like, okay, I feel like that's a pretty good video. Regardless, when I watch it 4 months, 5 months, 6 months later, maybe a year later, I always feel like, oh, I think that could be better. Why? Because we're also always progressing. And if this is something that you're constantly doing in your business, you're going to constantly get better at creating training videos. Or it doesn't even have to be a video. Sometimes we've seen scenarios where like, man, that video probably could just be a Word document. The video seems overkill, overcomplicating it. Let's just create a job aid in the form of some sort of document that they can have. Now, also as part of training, and important that these things live in a place that's easy to search, easy to find for your team members. We personally use Adobe Learning Management software. We use their system to house all of our training videos. We go as far as having basically a career path for every team member. And so we have a series of videos that all new hires watch, educates them about our culture of our company, standard things like this is how we communicate as a company to clients. This is what's really important. Here are our core values, those types of things. Then maybe like an admin, for example, is going to watch videos on how to do their admin job, where a tax professional in our company is going to watch a video on what our tax professionals do. And even based on experience levels, our entry-level tax professionals are watching different videos, but it's in one system. We've spent a lot of time developing it. If you don't have a training system yet, maybe, hopefully I'm not overwhelming you, just giving you an idea of where it can go. I think in the beginning, you just want to make sure you have a system in place so that your new hires are going to get more than just your initial one-day focus. I would recommend at a baseline for any system is that you at least outline what do the first 30 days look like for a new hire? What do you need them to learn in those first 30 days for you to justify having them in the business? Meaning, how can I get an ROI for this new team member within the first 30 days? Might be some positions where it's like, it's going to take them 90 days to get up to speed. It's a more complicated position, more involved responsibilities. Totally fine. But 30 to 90 days, hopefully they're at least creating enough value to cover your monthly investment in their salary. The second thing is lack of systems. Now, what I just went through with the training stuff is actually a system for training. I started talking about job aids and maybe videos, but we turned it into a system by saying we're going to use this software, and there's others out there. So, do your research, find one that works for you. But again, we use Adobe Learning Management software. We wanted our training videos to be a system, and that's why we created the learning path. The system allows us to go back and randomly push out other videos. Like if we see, man, it just seems like this department is still struggling with this, we can push out in the Adobe system, hey everyone, we want you to review this video. After they watch the training video, most of them are videos. Some of them are just job aids, but there's always a quiz that follows and they have to score a certain amount on the quiz just so that we have some sort of reporting mechanism that they watched the video and understood the material. Sometimes there's training videos and then we have shadow day type of things. Okay, you've done this. Well, we need to watch someone do it now. And then after you've watched someone do it now, the next step is you do it and someone watches you do it and then they correct you. And we build that into our training system so that we can, again, try to get our team members up and running and being productive for our business as soon as possible. But that's just one system. What's your system for invoicing clients? System for doing the actual work? We've had a lot of outside non-tax related people when we engage with them for their vendor services. They're like, wow, you've created kind of like an assembly line type of process for your tax returns. Like, yeah, because that allows us to be more productive. And that's always been part of our vision. How do we create an assembly line process so that, of course, we're as productive as possible while still having a personal touch type of relationship with our clients? And that's how we've designed our tax service systems. But it's a system and it's done the same way every time. Our admin do the same steps at the beginning of the process to get the client documents every time. When we get to the end, we review the tax return the same way every time. If we don't have those systems, you may be able to do everything without something documented or a system to follow, or that you think you're following. But if someone sat you down and said, well, how do you do this? You have a system, you have a method in which you're doing something the same way every time. But because you've done a lot more than your team members, you might take for granted how efficient you are at it. And if we want to grow our business and scale, we need team members to be able to duplicate what we can do. And so that's where the system comes into play, because it allows you to duplicate yourself in the approach you take to do the services, but the system doesn't exist unless it's documented so that someone can follow the steps. A lot of small business owners don't take the time to do that type of work because they always feel overwhelmed and they're always trying to get to the next dollar that needs to be deposited. Another thing that came to mind when I was asked this question is scope creep. That's what we call it. But it's essentially what I'm saying is you and the client agreed on a service at a price, and then the client is now asking you to do more stuff that isn't part of what you initially agreed on. If we don't have mechanisms in place, like systems to catch these things, or maybe just training with the team members to have crucial conversations with clients, it's as simple as that sometimes. Like, yeah, Bob, did you just tell them? Like, we can totally do that, but here's the additional fee. Some people are uncomfortable with that and they need to be trained on how to do those things or be given permission to have those types of conversations. But that's scope creep. We end up doing free work, and we have to make sure we have systems in place to catch those so that we still have a great relationship with the client, but we are having a free exchange of value. Not free in the sense of dollar free, but free in this free exchange, meaning you want more work, we're going to tell you how much that price is, and therefore we can get a return on doing that work for you. Doing free work is a great way to go out of business. I totally understand going above and beyond client expectations and delivering a wow package. I'm talking about scope creep. And if it's a habitual thing in any small business, that business will not be in business for much longer. And now something not necessarily related to scope creep, but it does relate to the services that we offer. Sometimes we're not being productive, not because we're doing free work, but simply because we've said yes to do paid work that our company doesn't actually have the capacity to deliver at the date we promised it. This happens all the time. I mean, and I shouldn't use the superlative all, I'm sorry. It happens a lot with the clients that we work with when it comes to helping them on these types of things. It's just not something that business owners naturally think about, especially in service-based businesses. Like, how much of my service can I actually do based on the team members that I have and the time in the day? This is how we get to a point without thinking about that. This is why some people are working 80 to 100 hours a week, because they've said yes and they just one more thing. Yeah, but if you've said yes and it's just one more thing 100 times, now all of a sudden I'm putting in 10-hour days, 15-hour days. We need to understand at all times how much of a service we can rotate through. I call that capacity management. And this is one of the reasons why we're not being productive, because we're not taking the time to even understand the capacity. And if we don't understand what our capacity is, there's no way we can manage it, because now we're just kind of throwing wet noodles against the wall to see what sticks. If we have the capacity, then let's bring on the work. If we don't have the capacity, we need to understand what resources we need to add in order to provide a good service to the client. For example, if I have one team member and one team member can do 300 tax returns in a year, and that's all I have, and they're the only one doing tax returns, and I've said yes to do 500 tax returns, I have overcommitted by 200 tax returns. But if I didn't take the time to think about that, I didn't realize I'm overcommitted. And so if I know going in, it's like, oh, we can do 300 tax returns this year. Once I get to 300, it's like, well, what's the interest? Okay, let me add more capacity, because it seems like we have enough interest and people are coming in that I can play that game of adding capacity while I add clients. I have had clients go out of business because they took the opposite approach and added way too much capacity before they had the revenue to support it. And that they 3 months, they overhired. Oh, we did this big deal. We're gonna get so many new clients. And it was a call center approach type of service. So he had like 30 sales reps on the phone. Guess what? The leads did not come in fast enough, and he bled through his cash reserve that was already pretty low because he had made some prior mistakes, not focusing on these types of things of his company being productive. He was just literally focused on top line only. Those are my thoughts. What's really stopping your business from being productive? Let's get some training systems in place. Let's get all your other systems in place and documented. Try to avoid scope creep whenever possible. Understand your capacity. So if you found this helpful and want to dive deeper, I go into all these types of things on how to fix these in the 3.3 rule. It's going to teach you how to make your business more productive, and you can find the link to the book in the description below. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.